Welcome to the final show at the International Leadership Association Conference. We are incredibly fortunate to have the keynote speaker, Jeroen Van der Veer. He was named the CEO of what is now Royal Dutch Shell in 2004 amid a corporate fraud scandal. He quickly applied his signature leadership style of steady, pragmatic leadership. So let's start with, what is the essence of your leadership?
High clarity, keep it very simple, and concentrate you on this simple and clear communications.
In your conversation, you went into a lot of detail about what that actually means in practice.
In the end, a leader should tell where to go. I call that point B. You have to be honest on point A, where we are now, and then you have to take the people on the journey. That is the process. That sounds very academic. So in practice, you have to be in a much more appealing way to say, this is how we should be, and then you have one or two liners that people think, oh yeah, I feel at home with that. And then of course you have to convince them why they have to go there. And that is to say, where we are today is not good enough. And then they like to know, okay, what can I do to help there? So you have to give them directions as well. And all the time, keep it very simple, keep it very short. No PowerPoint presentations. It should be elevator speeches. And the best you can reach or achieve as a leader, when a person comes home tonight and he said, what did the boss say today? Your partner is asking that. If you then say exactly the same one-liners as the boss said in the morning, then you are a long way.
You gave the example of taking your strategy to just a few words. And so can you talk a little bit more about that?
I do realize that the mission of a company is not different from a vision for a company or the strategy or the purpose of a company. But for all the people in the company to sit one day in a luxury hotel and to discuss that, I think is not useful. I think in the end, you have to say to the people, where are we today? That's that point A. Where's point B? Where's that going? And how can I make that point B where we have to go specific for me and what our department, how can I help to do with that? And now from time to time you may have somewhere a publication in the company where they deal with all this purpose stuff, as I call it. So keep it very simple, because in the end, strategy, mission and purpose, they are not that different. There's a good discipline for some strategic guys to think it through whether it is all consistent, but it is not a kind of people process for employees.
And then you talked about moving from that big picture that is consistent across the company, the job of middle managers, to translating that to what I do as a line person when I show up.
When I was young, then you had a presentation from the top person, the CEO, and then what the staff did from headquarters, then they sent that out on slides, and then every manager with speaking notes. And basically they had to repeat this presentation of the top manager to all the staff down onto the oil rigs or the refinery shop floor. I think that is the wrong way to see middle management like that. In Dutch we say you use the middle management as parrots, like the bird. Repeat the same line, the parrot repeats the same line which he was just picking up. So the role of middle management is of course to add value. And what is that? You take this one-liner off the top, which gives a rough idea of the point B for the total company. Then you have to make that specific what that one-liner means for your own department. And the -1 level does do that, -2 from the top, and so on. So every time they have to make that specific point B very specific to their situation. So they summarized, the top guy says this, the boss of my boss said how our total division fits into that. This means for our department that, and that's how I, as a leader from you, and now I'm the -3 level, translate that, and I take ownership that what we do fits in this total company. So the role of management in the journey from A to B is very important. They have to make the B's very specific. And they should spend 90% of their time on this specific part and only 10% or 5% what the top message was.
Because the employees have access to the top message, right? Or communicating as the CEO on a regular basis.
As a top leader, you have, of course, to create and to help your middle managers to make the be specific. But the way you can do that is very easy. You have now emails, or even, I'm not sure you can do it in 140 letters, the tweets. But you can write a very short email to all your staff, and you say, well, we had our senior management conference, and I said now, this is the updated strategy, these are the 4 key words, this is the one-liner, these are the business fields where we like to play, this is how we can win. This is an email shorter than half a page, otherwise people will not read it. And I have asked all the managers to make it specific for your particular department, what it means for you. And if you don't hear about it, by the way, this is my address, and you can respond to me.
Actually, you talked about an example where you asked someone if they knew what the point B was, and they said, what's a point B?
Yeah, I think you can use it as a checklist. So if you say, my philosophy is you go from A to B plus next steps, of course, point B is then very important. If you are on an operational visit and you speak to a supervisor of an oil rig, and he says, what is the point B for here? And if they look at those eyes at you, sir, what are you talking? Not an idea. Then, of course, the vertical top-down process fails. So then what you can do is you send a very simple email between all the bosses and that particular supervisor on the oil rig. And he said, well, I asked this and that question. What was going on here? Why didn't it happen? And if you do that a couple of times, I assure you, then very soon the whole company knows. You have always to know your A, you have to know your specific B, and the next steps.
You talked about taking over at a point of crisis. How did you manage a crisis different than ongoing operations?
In the beginning of the crisis, people say, how come? Which has should roll? They are all busy with the past. Now that is important to get lessons learned. If the whole company is busy how it happened, I don't come out of the crisis. So I have to isolate the drivers which we brought the company to a crisis, are to put a fence around it. So I say, I've asked investigations, we will take lessons learned. If something went wrong, if people did really something wrong, we will take appropriate measures. But that's it. But realize our task, and then I have a bond between you and me, and I look at you, our task is how we come out of this crisis and not wondering about those hats that have to roll. So how do we build up a good future for you and me in this company? And then you are back to very simple and clear communication, and then you know the rules to come because people may be confused, insecure. So then you have to say, okay, this is the strategy or the plan to come out of the crisis. Everybody can help, even if it didn't happen in your division. We can drop one shoe, and maybe it happened somewhere else, but you have to help now to be perfect. Nothing goes wrong there. And we need very good performance of your division because we lost money where the crisis was. And you have to take visible leadership, frequent, simple communication on a predictable way. You should be, as a leader, the person who talks to the press and to the media. Don't leave it to the press office, not every day, but especially in the beginning of the crisis. And last but not least, make clear that you take ownership, but it is not about the crisis. I am here to help the company to come out of crisis. I'm not interested in my own salary or how it affects my bonus. I don't have any problem if my compensation is lower than my predecessors. I am here to help you, and together we will take the company to the next level. I think that are some of the essential points to come out of a crisis.
So clearly owning it, we made a mistake. However one says that.
And brutal honesty. Okay. You see sometimes that leaders in a crisis, they say it was not that serious. I put a team to it. And then they took it a beetje mentally at a distance. It has nothing to do with that. They don't do it that way. And so you can say, as far as I can see now, we made some very bad mistakes. Then you say we made some very bad mistakes. The second one, where brutal honesty is, how to take the company forward. The strategy for hope will usually fail. So be realistic, because people will be very critical at that moment. they think, okay, this is a credible plan. So don't try to sell illusions or to say you work very hard 2 months, 3 months, and then it is all as yesterday. Be honest about that. The company that goes through a serious crisis usually doesn't come out the same. There's no obligation for you to describe how it will be different, but don't try to sell illusions.
I appreciate the honesty outwardly and inwardly, because your employees build or lose trust in you forever based on how you handle that. So our future generation of leaders, what would you want them to take away from this conversation with you?
And when I think about especially the younger generation of managers, a lot of good things about them, but some people are very fascinated with their own CVs or resumes in the US. In the end, you have to believe in the system for which you work. And then it is company first. It is not you first building up a good CV. It is put the company first. And if you do well, if you contribute to the good things of the company, then as a result, but only as a result, that you may make a career or a next step. And don't get the order wrong. That is the first thing. The second thing is, especially for young leaders, think about it. How do I get focus and speed? Usually people lose it because the mind of the people who has to be led, so say the followers, they were going in too many different directions. And then you lose speed. So how do you do that? How do you get this focus? And how do you get enough speed? Because in the end of the day, there were many good other companies out. So you have to be on the right speed vis-a-vis the competition. And at least then you worked it out for yourself. But my secret was always to have very high clarity, make even complex things simple. And last but not least, and this is very serious, keep listening. I use just in my speech here, it helps if you have flappy ears, yeah? Then listen all the time. Listening, at a certain moment you have to say, okay, I've listened to all of you, I understand this may happen, that may happen. Hang on, I happen here to be the leader, that's why we go to that corner.
I often hear people say, keep it simple. What they're trying to do is get rid of the complexity. I'm assuming you took in all of the complexity and what came out was understandable for your audience.
Yeah, that's a very good point. You have to listen to the complexity. You have to think as a leader about it. I'm not a facilitator, so we take the average. Because of good leadership, sometimes you have to make, to make a 90 degrees turn. And usually that starts with yourself or very few people. So we say in the Netherlands, you must have the possibility to row on the river against the current. That's very important for the leader because you listen to the complexity and you think if we do more of the same, it goes wrong. Having done all of that, and that's your point, keep it simple, probably, then you make it simple. And the essential thing, why should people prepare to be a corner? Because you have very good one-liners, why it is not acceptable to do more of the same. And you have a logic why point B is better than today. So to make it simple, and then in the end, if you have it wrong, it helps you. If people can you feedback and to say, sir, you got it wrong. And then you get the dialogue and so on.
So that then reinforces the listening.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've created an environment that is safe for people to give you feedback.
Yeah.
And that in fact you seek that.
Yeah, you have to seek that. There's more than operational visits. You have to make sure that when you write your weekly email, they can answer that. I had a whole process for answering all those emails so that people know that it's registered, what they say, and so on.
So you sought continual or periodic, you had a process to seek feedback.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.